have a Ugandan representative to monitor, counsel, and translate for domestic workers who are, or other workers who are in Saudi Arabia. So basically that is my responsibility.
So you know Al Arabia very well?
Yes.
How do they greet?
Will you be able to translate to the viewers?
You, God, how do
We can say Kaif al-Hal, how are you doing? Sabah al-Khair, good morning.
So if someone is saying, I've been beaten, how is that said?
Basically, these things, domestic workers cannot speak them, but we try to give them the basic Arabic in English. Because you can say, Dharaban al-Kafil, the sponsor has beaten me. But we emphasize that they come when they are having basics and good in English so that they can be able to communicate to us. So it's not a must that they should be knowing the language as far as they can speak English to communicate with the supervisors.
How easy is it to get this? Because I don't want to believe that every person in Saudi Arabia, you call them sponsors,
Yes.
knows English. So how easy is it for someone to grasp Arabic?
That one, it goes back to the training centers, because these domestic workers, before they are taken to Saudi Arabia, they get a training, which training is a 7-step training. And in those steps, there is Arabic, basic Arabic, that a domestic worker needs to leave Uganda to go to Saudi Arabia. When she has the basic Arabic that can help her communicate to the sponsor, report in case there is any problem, or communicate to office in case there is an issue.
Samba, that we shall dive in later. But I'm looking at a 2 weeks training that has an element of getting basic language of a foreign country.
Yes.
Not sufficient enough. Anyway, let's go to, we shall get to that later. Now, Samba, we are seeing a number of reports coming in of girls battered. Some have lost their lives. And one of the conditions, like you said, was having your office in place.
Yes.
So, how best can you explain why these are in existence, despite some of the steps that government put in place or made a requirement, such as your office?
First of all, the major problem you're having up to now is that we are giving medication to a disease we've not understood. So that's one of the major challenges that is disturbing this sector. Because first of all, when you talk about labor externalization, it is a 6-party thingy. There is a Saudi government, there is a Ugandan government, there is a Saudi company, there is a Ugandan company, there is a Saudi sponsor, there is a domestic worker. All of these people have their responsibilities and rights well guided by the law. But you find that the challenge is still in describing what should be the responsibility of the Ugandan government, what should be the responsibility of the Saudi government, what should be the responsibility of a Ugandan company, what should be the responsibility of a Saudi company, and the domestic worker and the sponsor. So you find that the challenge that is still there, you find that the responsibility which might have been given to the Ugandan government is then given to a Ugandan company. Responsibility which should have been given to a Saudi company is being given to a Ugandan company, and vice versa. So failure to understand, failure to realize whose responsibility up to now shall be having problems. Because when you go to monitoring, when you go to selection, when you go to following up on the court judgments, it is well established in the bilaterals which are available between the two countries that who does what. But up to now, we're not yet able to understand. We don't know that if a girl is beaten in the house, who should we ask? If a girl is not paid salary, who should we ask? If a girl comes in Saudi Arabia when she's pregnant, who should we ask? If a girl is sick and fails to get medication, who should we ask? So that is where the challenge is still.
But how could that be a challenge, yet everything is clear, stipulated? In these bilateral agreements, I've read a number of them, even went on that which is all over the internet.
Yes.
But everything seems so clear.
Yeah.
Now, what is hard for the 6 parties to understand?
What is hard, first of all, I'll start, last time I saw the director of labor, Mr. Martin Wandera. I've been to the embassy in Saudi Arabia. But the challenge is, first of all, I've talked about description of responsibilities. You'll find that the issue of monitoring should be done by the Saudi government. But Saudi government, that is as per the bilateral between Uganda and Saudi Arabia. But when you go to supervision of the Saudi government, that should be done by the what? It should be done by the Ugandan government. But what happens? You go to the embassy, my brother, The embassy, I want to thank them. They are doing a very great job. But you're talking about a group of 5 people who should monitor Saudi Arabia, who should monitor Bahrain, who should monitor Kuwait. So you find that people don't know what should be the responsibility. Because if you define that it should be the responsibility of the government now, to say that it's going to be the government supervising the responsibilities of Saudi Arabia, this calls the government to come on and provide a clear budget. That the Ugandan embassy in Saudi Arabia, this is your responsibility. So we need to give you staff. Up to now, there are no labor attaches in Saudi Arabia. How do you expect a group of 5 people who are not even well facilitated, as per what I know, to monitor the whole of Saudi Arabia? Me, my company, I'm having over 80,000 people right now in Saudi Arabia who have deployed. I'm having a team of 8 supervisors. So how do you expect the embassy, which has to monitor all the Saudi Kingdom, to monitor some countries in the Gulf, having 5 staff? So I think we need to go back on the drawing board and understand who is responsible for what. And after defining that, what are the conditions, what should be the support given to that person so that he or she is able to deliver his or her responsibility. But before that, we shall have this continuing the way it is.
Now, I also want to put this to you. You're the people in this business. And if I look at one of the things that bring in a lot of revenue in our country, I think labor externalization, the last financial year, even with COVID-19, it is among the top 3 for our nation. Don't you think we should hold you for not doing much to present your reasons right to the authorities that be? Because you have a justification that, look, we are bringing in so much into the treasury, and all we need to end this negative publicity, all we need to ensure that we secure this business. Because the last time I watched, I think the Hashemite leader of that is Saudi is saying, but we have a number of countries. Why Uganda? Why Uganda? The number of times, this you know better, whether I even threatened to tell Uganda, please, with domestic workers, we've had enough of you. So you, the people running this, what have you done to cause action? Because we've lamented since we signed this, I think 2017. It's been lamentation, lamentation, lamenting, now this, now that. But meaningful action, yet we know that problem. It's not being taken.
I think here, because if I'll give an example of countries like Philippines. Philippines, they're owning this thing. The government is strictly owning the labor externalization. They have the Migrant Workers Association. They have the Filipino Overseas Labor Office. They have a lot of labor attaches. I'm already seeing their ministers flying into Saudi Arabia. What is the problem, which is still in Uganda, is that the government has left, is trying, but I'm sorry to say, it's not doing enough. The government has left this thing to be monitored, to be managed by the private sector, of which you're talking about Saudi Arabia, you're talking about Uganda. So this is a foreign country. Meaning, at a certain extent, the company here in Uganda or the company in Kenya will have where it stops when it calls in the government to come in. So meaning it should be the government to bring in policies, it should be the government to bring in systems, it should be the government to bring in all ideologies so that it supports this sector. I will not say that the private sector is not doing enough, because they are doing enough. Though still there is still a challenge whereby some of them, they are not still following.
Asha, I was trying to speak to some of the attaches for some companies, and it was disaster. Someone cannot even speak Arabic. Others, they just looked for someone who can speak Arabic. Others, even just speaking to you, they cannot make a point clear. So you wonder then, how are these going to follow up a girl who is held in a home, not paid for months, sometimes even beaten, when even communicating to just a TV presenter on phone, trying to interview, like I'm doing with you. They cannot make anything, they cannot present anything. So I don't think also such these companies have done enough. But your company and a few could have done enough to have the right people there.
But who should supervise these companies? It goes back to that question. Because who licensed these companies? To the government. So meaning, if I've given you a license to operate as a labor externalization company, it should be my responsibility in front of the public to make sure that you're doing what you have to do. So if the companies have not selected...
So you can put requirements,
you can put
vet
requirements.
these...
Because up to now, the government said there should be supervisors, but who knows their qualifications? Who knows their job description?
I can pick on a relative,
So
I can pick
people
on
are taking
anyone.
relatives, people are, sometimes even some companies in Saudi Arabia, they get someone who is a domestic worker, and then when the embassy comes to check, they bring the domestic worker as a supervisor. No one can understand this, no one can evaluate, no one can confirm this. So I think the government needs to own this thing. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Labour, all relevant ministries, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, because we find that, for example, we are seeing cases all over social media. We are seeing cases all over televisions, but no one comes out to clear the air. We are seeing people whose children have died, and they say, my child died in Saudi Arabia. They go to the companies have closed. The company, people close and hide inside the company. So we expect that maybe the government, we expect that maybe UERA, maybe Ministry of Labour owns these people. But no, if the company has closed, your daughter died, come, I'm going to give you a report.
Because there's a guarantee that this company had put.
There's a guarantee.
Yes.
I've seen countries like Kenya, because Kenya, they're not so much to where we are. But there's a case I saw, the embassy came out clear and cleared the air. That, what is happening is ABCD. But this negative information has remained in the public because even the government is not doing enough to come out and sensitize the public. There is someone says, my daughter died in Saudi Arabia, his kidney or her kidney was taken away. We need someone to come out and clear the air. That no, the kidney is ABCD. But people are in their offices saying, no, for me, I know the truth. The truth is not like that. But people are on social media, people are on television saying, no, my daughter was killed. Someone should come out and give us medical reports. But it's because people are not doing enough. I'm sure maybe the embassy would be doing it, but I think the diplomatic protocols, they need to get clearance from Ministry of Labour, clearance from Foreign Affairs. But at least Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Labour doesn't need clearance to speak to the public. The likes of Director Wandera, the spokespeople of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you come out. Someone says my daughter died in Saudi Arabia, and you're saying it's not true. Someone should come out and clear the air.
Now, with that well explained, currently, how can we address these challenges? We know there is a bilateral agreement that stipulates from contract everything, but that has not been biting enough. Where should these young girls get redress? Because we know many of them, a number of them, go through this and they will tell you, I don't even have my phone. My sponsor decided to take it. Others will tell you, I'm calling the office. They're saying we are getting back to you. It is now 6 months. They are getting back to me. Others will tell you all kind of stories. And I know, rightly speaking, even you, my guest this morning, it is hard for you as a person working for a private company.
Yes.
If they tell you that a housemaid or a domestic worker in some home of a general in Saudi Arabia, Riyadh or whatever, is being maybe battered, for you to move with your company documents and car and go and knock on this gate, I know how hard it is for you to go to police and cause such action. Yet I know government can do that. So where is the redress now?
I think, first of all, there should be a joint effort from the parliament, from Foreign Affairs, from the Ministry of Labour, from the embassy, from the private sector themselves, so that we come down, sit down, and we draft a policy, we draft a solution. But what is happening, that when you go in Foreign Affairs, they are thinking of their own solution. When you go in the embassy, they also have their own solution. Parliamentarians who come, they also have their own solutions. When you go to the private sector, they also have their own solution. So I think this is an issue which is affecting the country, both positively and negatively. So this calls for all stakeholders to sit down, because solutions are there. Countries like Philippines, they're doing well. Why not Uganda? So let's just sit down together. We say, because there is no need for having a labor externalization desk in Foreign Affairs, at the same time at the airport, at the same time in the Ministry of Labour. This is a government thing. So meaning we should focus on doing something that is joint. The private sector puts an input, the Foreign Affairs puts an input, Ministry of Labour puts an input. All stakeholders should be called so that a solution is drafted. Because the solutions are there. The supervisors. First of all, it's a solution. Because me, I've always told you here that you cannot challenge me with any of my domestic workers. I'm having clear systems. So companies like mine, they can be benchmarked to think of solutions. But I've had many delegations visiting my company, but I've not seen anything being implemented. So it's all about finding someone who's ready. Let's benchmark with that person. What is Injas doing that other companies are not doing? What is company X doing that my company is not doing? We think of these solutions, there we are able to solve this. But people are seated in their offices, everyone is there thinking, okay, I think this should be done, I think this should be done, and things are not implementable. So we need to come back, because this labor externalization, it came, it's not going to go away. So we either sort ourselves and bring better ways of having it, or because right now our negotiations and discussions, we left a level of saying we close, we open. No, now we are no longer at that level now, because it is happening and it's not going to stop. So,
but recently we saw cabinet coming up and saying you must give reasons why this should continue. If there are no clear reasons to justify why we should continue with the labor externalization of domestic workers, let it be put on hold forever or suspended.
No, the last time I was here, I told you, labor externalization was not opened by government. Government just came in to regulate. So how are you going to close something you did not open? That's why I've told you now we are no longer at the level of discussing whether it should open, whether it should continue. We are not at that level now, because you cannot stop it. I want to be very open with you. You stop Saudi Arabia, people will go to Oman. You stop Oman, people will go to Jordan. You stop Jordan, people will go to Bahrain. Right now, we saw people stranded in Dubai, but did they not take them there? People who are in prisons right now in Dubai, who have overstayed there, no one took them there. But right now, they are bringing back the responsibility to the government. That the government, we are stranded here, but the government did not take them. So meaning, if the government is still in discussions of we should hold, we should suspend, we should leave that. We are not at that level now. We are at the level now of discussing how do we sustain, how do we maintain the labor externalization, and how do we regulate it. But discussing whether open or close, we are no longer at that level, my brother. Because people will take themselves there.
And well, once you're in any of those countries as a domestic worker, my sister, you're there on your own. Or domestic workers in the Middle East only go to Saudi Arabia. That's where government has an agreement. That's where you have bilateral agreements, where there's a fallback position. Because according to these agreements, if you go through the right channels, government of Uganda has a responsibility on that person, because from the contract, from the job orders, everything has gone through proper channels. But if you're in Kuwait, I hear you're in Oman, you're in Jordan, there as a domestic worker, it is very risky. And it means you are trafficked into those countries, because we do not have that bilateral relations on that. But Nsamba, coming back, you've talked about what government must do.
Yes.
But also one thing I want us to discuss, how are these girls prepared for the tasks ahead of them? Because much as there are those that are oppressed by virtue of their sponsors being rude and not knowing what to do, I've heard stories, I've interviewed many of these girls, spoken to many of these girls, and they seem some are not fit for purpose, in that they went into something they never understood very well. And at that point, when they say, this is not what I came to do, I mean, I'm not going to be sweeping 4 floors of a house. Even in Uganda, that is not done by one person.
Exactly.
Then the company tells you, no, just find ways of how you do that work, how you plan yourself. Because you're a domestic worker, they go to strange things. They're not used to houses as big as some of what they know. For them, they know they are going to do work maybe similar to what is here in Uganda. Tells you, man, just the sitting room is as big as twice this studio. So that this is too much work. How are they prepared? Do they have enough preparation? Are they told the facts? Or is it about enticing them to go? And then when they reach there, they find totally a different picture from what they had before departure from Uganda.
This is a two-way issue. Some of the domestic workers, they go there when they are aware of everything. And when they happen to reach there, they say, me, I don't know, I was not told. But still, many of them go to Saudi Arabia when it's not their fault, when they have not been told what is there. You find someone is in Saudi Arabia, but she's having pressure, she's having some issues whereby this person could have been filtered at the training level, at the selection level. So some companies in Uganda, they are not doing enough to implement, to supervise, the responsibilities of the companies and the responsibilities of the training centers. So that's why I told you we take it back to the government. I was in Kenya, but in Kenya, the training centers, they are directly supervised by the government. Even these domestic workers, after training them, they do exams, which exams are marked by the government. So I think, because we should no longer look at labor externalization as something that is a joke. It is an industry which is employing a P2 dropout. It is an industry which is employing a P6 dropout. So meaning this industry is very, very, very beneficial right now to our country. So it goes back to the government. The government, you gave out a curriculum to these training centers. But are you sure that the training centers are doing what they have to do? Me, if I go to Saudi Arabia when I've not been trained, who should I blame? I'm going to blame the supervisor of that training center. Because if I've given you a license, still, I should come back. I should supervise you. That what I'm training. Secondly, these people, after being deployed in Saudi Arabia, has anyone come out to make an investigation, to make research to confirm if the training we are giving to these domestic workers is the training they should be receiving? I'm sure no one has done that. Because we're after sending this person to Saudi Arabia to work 2 years. So someone should go. How many people have we trained last year? For example, I've trained 500 domestic workers. Just get 50 randomly. Find out, okay, we trained you about this. What is the, how did it help you? But no one is doing that. So, because whenever something is only owned, managed by business people, at one time they are going to do mistakes. Because a training center in Uganda is after putting in big numbers to get profits. But the government, the objective is different. The government's objective would be having this person trained, go to Saudi Arabia, represent her country very well. So meaning there are different interests. So meaning the government, knowing that the interest of the training center is going to be different, the government should come in to supervise, to make sure that its own interest is also received. But they're not doing enough. We are seeing, I think now we're having a lot of training centers. But the only issue is someone going there and spend there 14 days, even if she does not go there. Even if she does not enter the training center, but the moment 14 days start to calculate, immediately she gets approval of the contract and she goes in Saudi Arabia. But many of these people come to Saudi Arabia, they don't even know the contract. The companies themselves there, they don't know the contract, some of them. So it goes back to the government. The government needs to own the labor externalization industry because the bilaterals were signed by the government, not by the private sector. But the moment the government continuously, reluctantly leaves the industry to be managed by the private sector, to be supervised by the private sector, these problems are not going to stop.
Well, I love it when you don't paint the picture rosy like many do, but you address facts. No wonder you're based in Saudi Arabia. These are things you see every day. These are people you interact with every day. But finally, how can we change? Well, you're giving me your last remarks.
Yes.
How can we change this that some people kind of view as modern day slavery into something that is meaningful employment of value and with safety?
First of all, I want to categorically state Saudi Arabia, they are doing a very great job. The government of Saudi Arabia, they're doing a very great job. If you look at the contract, if you look at the labor laws, they have set in systems. Every day they are bringing in new policies to make sure that these domestic workers are catered for well. But even if these laws are put in place, they need someone to follow the implementation. Even if these laws are put in place, they need someone to go back and discuss that how should we implement this. So me, what I think, you go back to the Ugandan embassy in Saudi Arabia, understand from them, Ugandan embassy, what do you think is the problem? Come here to the private sector, ask them, what do you think is the problem? You go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where do you think is the problem? Because last time I was surprised that the ministry which brought the biggest amount in the last financial year, although they were given 30 million for the financial year, I saw the director talking about that, Uganda. So how are they going to send labor touches? How are they going to supervise this? So the solutions are there, but let's involve all stakeholders to discuss about a long-term solution because it is there.
Well, I want to thank you so much. That is Ansamba Sharif Mohammed, who happens to be the Manager Africa Affairs for Ingazi based in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Thank you so much for your time, and hope you enjoy your stay home. Well, we all must work together to ensure that this form of employment is safe for the people that are taking advantage of it. Many countries are getting a lot of money in labor externalization. Say the domestic workers, Philippines, among others, are getting so much. This is one area where these people can send back money to develop their families, plan better, but they need to work in a safe and secure environment. And he called upon government. It's time to act. It's time to ensure we prioritize this sector, because we must now feed greatly the cow that we milk, because it has proven it gives us milk. So let's feed it and we shall get better. Have a lovely day. God bless you.
Enforcement of the obligation of the recruitment companies.
Government is also carrying out investigations on the issue of illegal
the quest, giver of life, Alpha without Omega. I am Africa.
Hail to Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, a land with the world's most beautiful, captivating features, hills, mountains and valleys.